right, we're going to kick things off with our first conversation of the morning. I'm going to be handing things over to Ann Kirschner, who will be moderating this discussion. Ann is the president of Hunter College of the City University of New York. And Ann will be joined on stage here by Dr. Michael Crow, president of ASU, of course, and professor of science and technology policy. We're really thrilled to have him here, as well as Benedict Gomes, who is the SVP of Learning and Education and Sustainability at Google. So we're really thrilled for their conversation. So here to talk about augmented intelligence and reimagining how the world learns. Please give it up for our first panel.
Good morning. Come on. Good. Get me started. I can't play the violin, but I do appreciate the good morning. I'm so delighted to be here with Ben and with Michael to talk about how ASU and Google are working together to reimagine how the world learns. And we're going to talk about Google and ASU, but I wanted to first talk about the people behind this partnership, Ben and Michael. You're both transformers, which to my mind is one step beyond
if only
innovators.
We could be as big as those transformers in the movies.
That's right. And you're very different people, but you share this goal of advancing education at an unprecedented scale. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came to think about education as the gateway to opportunity. And Ben, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about how this all came about for you.
Yeah, I've been at Google for a long time, almost 25 years now, and most of that time I spent on search. And I had this experience a long time ago in 2000. I was on a small bus between Bombay and Pune, and most people had not heard about Google then, but a couple of people on the bus had heard about Google and had used Google. And to me, this was completely mind-altering because I had not thought that what you're working on could affect people all around the world. And I saw the power of information to transform people's access to opportunities in various ways. But I've always had an interest in learning myself. My mother was a school teacher. She's 96 now. She was a school teacher in the 40s for only a couple of years because she was allergic to the technology of the time, which was chalk. So she couldn't be a school teacher.
What a quaint technology.
I know. Magic markers would be better. Yeah, but she always instilled in us that curiosity in me and my siblings, which I think took me to where I am today. And what I saw when I was thinking about what I do after search, I was interested in learning, is that people come to Google with that curiosity. They come to search, they come to YouTube, they come to Google Scholar, Google Arts and Culture with that curiosity. And I think there's a huge potential, especially with AI today, to transform that curiosity into much deeper learning.
Curiosity, key attribute. Michael, many leaders in higher education flaunt their teeny tiny acceptance rates, and the more people they turn away, the higher the quality. You've turned that equation on its head, and that led to the creation of ASU and the New American University. So tell us, similarly, some of the milestones along the way to that formulation.
Yeah, I don't know so much milestones. I grew up in a working class, working poor family and moved a lot 21 times before I went to college at age 17 schools in multiple states, 4 high schools in 3 states in the 10th grade, living in trailer parks, all kinds of neighborhoods. What people don't realize is that in the public housing projects and military housing projects that we lived in and the trailer parks that we lived in, because as an enlisted guy, my dad in the Navy with 5 children was paid at a level below the poverty index for the United States at the time. So what I realized growing up was that I was surrounded by smart kids, surrounded by smart people, surrounded by ambitious people, and then all along the pathway, including siblings, just wiped out, obliterated. And I remember moving from school to school to school to school, and I encountered these I don't know what to call them other than they were like cruel teachers, who would say, well, really, Michael, you just have to catch up. Well, catch up from what? I don't even know what you're talking about. Or you already had that, so why don't we just have you feed the rats this semester because you already took this. And so what I found was this unrelentingly uncreative, completely socially dysfunctional educational system that I experienced myself. And then by the time I got to college and I was this consumer of learning at the highest level that I could possibly put myself through, I found that I was being thwarted by the very people I was going to learn with. They said, well, you can only take one major. You can't take 5 majors. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't learn this. You can't learn that. There's no way to do this. You have to do this. And I'm just like, you guys are like ruining us. And so I became focused, almost obsessed. For the people that know me know this is true. Obsessed with how can we fix this? How can we use science and technology and new tools and new mechanisms and new computers and new ways of doing things? And how can we make a way in which all these kids that I knew that were really smart that ended up with less than optimum outcomes for their lives, and by my age now, many of them are dead, along the way. How can we use better tools to overcome a historic system of rigid, factory-oriented learning? And so for me, and I can give you lots of stories on this, for me, has been my driver for a long time.
So what I'm hearing between the two of you is essentially respect the user, respect the learner, and build the journey around that.
It's all about the learner, all about the student.
Yep.
The faculty is the means, not the end.
So talk a little bit about the partnership between the institution and the organization, Google and ASU. The stereotype is universities are slow-moving, allergic to innovation, can't get out of their own way, and in big tech, well, it's all about scale, it's all about making money. Somehow you transcended those stereotypes to build this really remarkable partnership. So, what did you each bring to the partnership?
From my perspective, when I got interested in learning and I moved to work on it, I was looking at all these people coming into Google with this curiosity. But Google is not really an educational institution, except in narrow areas in places like Grow with Google and cloud certificates and so on. And a lot of these people do want structured learning in some form. And ASU, I found, was at the forefront of adopting educational technology. And they've been partners with us for a really long time. I mean, the first partnership, I believe, was in 2007, when you all was one of the first adopters of Workspace for Education. And ASU has been an early adopter of every technology that is there. And so we visited ASU, Michael has visited Google and with his team. And so a partnership was formed that's, I think, a very natural partnership, because for us also, we want broad access. We want inclusive access to information. And I think that's the goal of ASU too. It's not an exclusive access. It's not counting its success by how many people are rejected, but by how many people are accepted into the university and how many people make progress through that university. And I think that, to me, personally resonated a lot, as well as, aligns with the company values.
So in the summer of 2001, I got this strange letter delivered to my office when I was working at Columbia University in Morningside Heights in Manhattan. And it was an invitation from a guy named Paul Allen to appear on an island somewhere off the coast of Seattle in the San Juan Islands for a meeting where 12 people would get together and talk about how do you build the final encyclopedia. And the final encyclopedia is a story, a 2-volume science fiction story, so that came with the invitation. And you had to agree that you wanted to read it before you showed up. So I go to this meeting, and one of your buddies, Larry Page, happened to be at this meeting. And he was this, I had read about him and knew about him, but in 2001, the summer of 2001, August, Google wasn't what it is now, but I realized in that meeting that the final encyclopedia concept was now not only intellectually dreamable, it was intellectually buildable. And so once you know that such a thing can be built, and while it might take decades to build it and decades to perfect it and AI systems to enhance it and all the kinds of projects that we're working on to make it real, once that occurs, now you know that no one has to be left out of access to what they need to know. No one. Once you know that, this concept of the final encyclopedia becomes possible, and Google is the closest thing to the final encyclopedia. All the things that they've built, all the things that they're doing, the YouTube functions, the search functions, now the learn functions, all these things. And so this is the notion of how do you, over time, help guide and build the final encyclopedia so that it can also be used, not just for personalized learning, but for organized, structured, tradable, certifiable learning outcomes along the way. So this has brought us, 23 years later, to this point where now we have this intersection of interests and a new kind of capability and a new team at Google and a new structure at Google where they're moving away from just filling the final encyclopedia to now organizing the final encyclopedia and structuring it so that it can be used for everything, not just some things. And so that's the connection with Google.
Why do you think Michael remembers that Larry Page was at that meeting, but not that I was at that meeting? Sorry, don't tell him I said that.
Because you were going to say this. Now, but why were you at that meeting?
What do you mean, why was I
You were
at
running
that
a
meeting?
company.
I was running a company, exactly.
And what was that company doing?
That company was the sort of the original online learning vision for what a university could be, called Fathom. So, okay, sorry.
Fathom.com.
I have to move on. Thank you, those of you who remember Fathom.
And who was the chairman of Fathom and who was the CEO?
I was the CEO and you were the chairman.
There we go.
I'm sorry, Ben,
I was not involved in this company at all.
So is this a one-of-a-kind partnership between Google and ASU, or could there be other, are you a paradigm for other kinds of partnerships between universities and companies? What do you think?
That's an interesting question. I think we have to work out, in this context, it's really helpful for us in many ways. First of all, with Study Hall, right? For instance, we are working with the Green Brothers and Crash Course, who have 15 million subscribers. And they teach things, dry subjects, in really interesting ways, and trying to take that through curiosity into this pathway to actually turning that into an outcome at ASU. And we've been able to work with ASU on bringing that together in a way that's really simple for students, because we find that they stumble with like all of the roadblocks around just signing up for classes and the payment and so on up front. So we try to backload many of those decisions until they know they have capability there. And so we've been able to work closely with ASU on that kind of a partnership at that level. So it takes a lot of commitment on both sides for that to happen. And it takes effort over time. So I hope it will be a paradigm for other such partnerships, but it takes will on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, just the conversion from, and I use this in the broadest sense, from sort of unstructured, somewhat anarchy in terms of everything being available to anyone, anytime, anywhere. That's unbelievably powerful until you need structure to trade what you have learned in a learning economy. And so you can't go from anarchy to a learning economy without building some sort of structures. And so the Study Hall project and other projects that we're working on with Google and with the Green Brothers and others is just a way in which we're trying to bring limited amounts of structure to enhance the learning economy transaction capabilities for each individual person. That's really what and that's going to ultimately involve everybody. So it's not going to be a limited thing.
So thanks for bringing up Study Hall, which is a key collaboration between the two of you. And I wanted to read a quote from one of the comments on Study Hall. Thank you guys for making this content. It warms my heart every time I see it. I'm 35, going back to school for the third time. I literally can't imagine how my life might have been different if these resources had been available when I was a teen. Exactly. So, Michael, you have this orienting framework of learning realms and this idea of Realm 5. Could you talk about Realm 5 and how Study Hall, which if you haven't seen, you got to go on YouTube and watch it, how it fits into that framework?
So Realm 5 for us is this notion of ubiquitous, massive access to learning opportunities, knowledge, and information. Those are three different things. That being available to the individual in the way that individual learns. And so it's massive availability of knowledge and learning opportunities and information in a customizable, digestible learning pathway designed and structured by the individual learner. The idea for Realm 5 comes from the young lady's primer in Neil Stephenson's novel, The Diamond Age.
Best novel ever written about education.
And there was this unbelievably empowering device. And so this is an incremental step towards that. So you take essentially everything that's available in YouTube or Google, everything that's available, and you find a way to structure it into an individualized pathway to learning so that the person that you read the quote from can find sort of what they know, understand what they know, contextualize their position in the learning continuum, put themselves on an arc of learning that's for them, and then move that arc upward for them in the way that they learn. And this project allows us to create the first manifestation of that at massive scale. We have other projects underway also, but this project allows us to do it in a way where the encyclopedic base exists, the pathway structures exist, the individualization tools exist, the connections exist, and so this is what we're enabling to bring all these things together.
So Ben, I know Study Hall is one of the projects that you have collaborated on, but also Google has many areas at YouTube, which is already the world's largest classroom. So tell us a little bit in this AI-fueled landscape. Where are we headed?
Yeah, so when I think about it, AI enables us to turn access to information in a way that you can retain it, you can ask questions, understand things better. So we've always styled search as the ability to answer any question you have. But that can go a lot further if you can ask follow-up questions, if you can really deeply understand and then retain what you've learned. So in all of these areas, whether it's in search, we're going from answers to giving you scaffolded explanations, follow-up questions that you can practice. People come to us for homework, for exam questions, for a whole host of needs.
The key being the individual gets to structure this by themselves.
Yes, they can ask the question that is pertinent to them and what their gaps might be.
Right.
And I use this myself all the time, right? Because when you're learning, there are particular things you don't know.
Yes.
So the next step in places like YouTube is if you can watch a video and you can put up your hand and say, I've got a question. That is an unbelievably powerful thing you could imagine that makes it much more interactive. And we're taking this one step further with something there's a demo out here done with Coding Train, Dan Schiffman, which is called ShiftBot, because he teaches coding, but his idea was, can we take what he is offering, his presence, along with you to the place where you're actually doing coding? So ShiftBot is an attempt to create a construct around that. So when you're actually doing coding, you can ask that question in the moment while you're coding, and you get responses back from his videos in the tone that makes sense for him. So we work carefully with him to create an opportunity of that sort. In classroom, teacher, which is used by millions of teachers around the world, we're seeing this, all of you all know this, there's this huge amount of burnout that we're seeing with teachers, especially after the pandemic. There's an opportunity for AI to make teachers' work a lot simpler. I've got a lot of teachers in my extended family, and they're overwhelmed by the amount of work they have to do, the paperwork and all the other things they have to do around the class. So we're building a labs around Google Classroom where we're working with teachers. We're building features like the ability to do lesson plans and a whole lot more things of that sort that will enable teachers, hopefully, to save a lot more time. And AI is making all of this possible. What would have been very hard to do because we didn't actually have the technology for understanding language. And what generative AI unlocks is fundamentally the technology for understanding language. And language is fundamental to not just communication, but learning in particular. We learn through words, we learn through language, and that is now being unlocked by generative AI, and so it enables our tools, wherever they are, to take that next step of power in enabling that journey to be a lot deeper.
So related to that, I think importantly is that a lot of people are fearful that somehow these technologies are going to replace the teachers or replace the professors, or that it has no intention for that at all. It's to enhance the teaching and learning process. It's to empower the professor to be able to enhance learning to even higher scales. And so it's just the opposite of what people are thinking about. You have to realize, that 20% are not finishing high school. Half the people that go to college are not graduating. People are frustrated because they can't keep up with the speed with which the economy is shifting and changing. We have to find ways to accelerate all these processes and make learning just as important as, this will sound funny, but learning and eating, the two things that you have to do to move forward, learning and eating. It's got to be that. It's got to be that common, that ubiquitous, that capable, that engageable.
Not
Still
quite
thinking about
breathing,
learning
but
and
getting
eating.
there.
Well, what I mean is that it's everywhere. It's available. It's you eat what you want. You customize it. You do this. You do that. There's thousands or millions of recipes. There's ways to configure things in every possible way. We've just become a little bit slavish to a group of academics who are, hugely full of themselves, and they just think that they've got the answers for everything. They have the methods for everyone to come up with the answers for everything. They just need to structure it in a way where people can learn more individualistically.
How do we get that message out to the rest of planet
Well, it's hard
academia?
because every time I say it, then I get hate mail. I get all these people that are after me. I mean, I get these guys that think I should continue to age quickly, and so they chopped off a part of my nose. So that process is underway.
They start with the nose.
They start with the nose. I mean,
Ben, what were you going to say?
No, I think, for almost everybody here, you'll have one or two teachers who played that, for me it was my mother, but a couple of teachers in my school who played that seminal role in sparking
Right.
that curiosity, that desire to learn more, right? And that's unbelievably valuable, I think. And for the people who don't encounter that, it's a huge loss. And I think part of that happens because teachers are overburdened. They come into teaching wanting to do that connection with the student. And then they find that they have to do a whole host of other things that are not connected to that, that connection with the student. So I think that magical moment, I think people are fundamental.
But now imagine that we move teachers into almost exclusively that role.
Yeah.
You took the nurse Cratchit teachers and moved them away. And then in that role, the teacher becomes these learning empowerers, and the students have these unbelievable tools that they're also working with. And we could think about, we've got to upgrade the role of teachers. We've got to expand the role of the teacher and the professor. Yeah. We've got to upgrade and skill and enhance the way that people are learning. Increase the compensation for these teachers, all kinds of things. We've got it all down to too low of a level right now. We need to enhance the level of learning.
So you're both at a point where you could do pretty much whatever you want and focus on the problems that you think are most important. And you've got an audience here of educators, of investors, of technologists, inventors. Just the entire educational ecosystem is sort of at this conference, which is why it's always so much fun to be here. So tell us in our last few remaining moments what you're dreaming about, what you'd love to accomplish, and how this team out here can help participate with you.
So I think from my perspective, the learning has always been something that's been seen as difficult. I think that's difficult for the teacher as well as for the student. I think if all of you can build the tools to create a tutor, a TA for every teacher, that can enable the empowering of the teaching side of it, right? And on the student side of it, I think there are all of these barriers to actually understanding. So what's happening in Google is we have a lot of people coming in with curiosity, and curiosity is kind of unbounded, and that gets killed when there are no answers or there are poor answers to it. And so if we can transform that curiosity into learning by making that learning a little easier, by A, you can ask questions, but B, you can find better ways to do that learning. Now, some of that happens with these amazing creators we have on YouTube, because they find that way to reach you that you could never have before. And, I've read, I don't work in physics at all anymore, but I watch YouTube videos and I go, that's how that works. And that's one creator has found a way to break through to my brain, how that particular concept can be intuitive. Now, if we can do that more broadly, make it so that when you encounter a new concept, you intuitively grasp it fully, we can turn that curiosity into much deeper learning. And I think that's not just a goal for Google, but I think it should be a goal for all of education technology to actually bridge that, to make learning so easy that the amount of learning that happens in the world just grows exponentially. So people are much more powerful.
It's very powerful.
So it's kind of strange. So one of the greatest orators in the United States in the last 200 years was Frederick Douglass. And so you can read his speeches and read his books and read his writings, and he never went to a day of school in his entire life. He was taught to read under penalty of death, both to his personage and the person that taught him, and yet he became philosophically enriched with a deep understanding of really complicated subjects that people major in college. Well, how did he do that? he did that because of his motivation. He did that because of what he was driven towards, and so forth and so on. And so what I'm still driven by is, how do we find a way to find the interest and the talent and the trajectory of each individual person and empower that? Because right now we still have people saying, well, Billy, you're not going to be that good of a student, and so you can drop out of high school by your own choice at age 16. Condemning Billy to a life of unbelievable complexity going forward. And in the United States, we still allow that. Billy can drop out of high school at 16 and be done. We have people that are not able to personalize or build their own identities. We still have a world where we think that math is a hard subject and all our teachers say it's hard and no one wants to take it, and we have a cultural bias to not learn it. The English language is infinitely more complicated than integral calculus, infinitely more complicated. Yet somehow we find a way to learn that. Somehow we find a way to learn that without having our brains filled with concepts and words, that we don't comprehend. And so what we have to find a way to do is to empower learning and the empowerment of the learning individual to really maximize human potential. We're still operating with unbelievable achievement. We're still way below our potential. Who knows where we could end up if we got more people, more creative, more dynamic. We have a $100 trillion, $150 trillion economy on the planet. What about a $10,000 trillion economy on the planet? How do we get that? How do we do those things? How do we make these things? How do we literally drive these things forward? And so right now in the United States, you can still predict educational outcomes based on a person's zip code. You give me their zip code and I can give you a probabilistic assessment with some accuracy of the outcome. Well, then therefore, we are idiots. We have to figure this out, and we've got to figure it out, and this is what I'm focused on.
Well, I can't imagine to companies, to organizations, to people better to reimagine how the world learns than Ben Gomes and Michael Crow. So thank you very much for joining us this morning.